All right, so we are going to begin. Today, we are going to talk about adapting in a global marketplace and how focusing on how to respect culture and ethics. And that's something that's very important nowadays as we become global professionals in the 21st century. So today, the content talks about how to understand culture better, how to learn and grow in this area. And I'll talk a little bit about leadership, culture, and ethics as a leader. And if you are going to invite some of your friends, feel free to scan the QR code and we'll be glad to join in as well. All right, so first of all, a quick introduction of myself. My name is Mark Barnabas Lee, and I used to be a teacher in school before I became an entrepreneur. And today, my practice, I focus on doing risk management for companies to help them look at not just a single risk, but enterprise risk. My expertise is in the area of data protection and cybersecurity. So there are a lot of issues with regards to ethics in cybersecurity because there is many issues with data all over the world. And you know most recently that Google has been fined, not once, but several times. The most recent was the one in Australia where they were fined for using the data of children. And the same fine or the same charge was posed to Google in California, US as well. So that is one of the ethical challenges to companies today in the 21st century. So before we go into today's topic on ethics and culture, these are the 10 core competencies that here in Singapore, where we organize a global professional summit to propose that these are 10 core competencies that we would look forward to propose to the whole world, because I think as new professionals in the 21st century, we need to have some of these skills so that we can better communicate, better collaborate, and better connect with one another. And they cover these few areas: critical thinking, communication, present and pitch ideas, personal branding and marketing, financial management, ethics and culture, which is what we're doing today, entrepreneur mindset, data protection and cyber safety, online collaboration, and personal mastery. So these are some of our competencies, and we have created 10 topics for you and your friends to learn more of. We're not here to share every detail about these topics and competencies. We would like to also propose local trainers and master trainers in different locations to also share their expertise. And of course, these 10 competencies are not the holy grail. It doesn't mean that you know all these 10, you become some demigod or anything. No, it's just that with these 10 competencies, I think we can become a better global citizen. So that's what we are proposing. So today, what are our objectives? Today, our objective is to understand the trends of professional practices in the 21st century, and also beyond COVID-19, what are some professional practices with regards to ethics and culture? And of course, to recognize the importance of culture and ethics as a professional, as a global professional, what are some of our good practices in culture and ethics? And finally, how do we develop strength in this area where we learn more about cultures, and how do we then understand ethics better being a global citizen, whether we are an employee or an entrepreneur? So I hope that you have more questions. Please post them and I'll be glad to take them during this session. But I must say as a disclaimer that I am no ethics expert. My area is data protection, and I believe that culture and ethics is important because in my field of data protection, culture, and ethics are very much applied. One of them is the ethical use of data, which I'll share a little bit more later. So let me just begin with a very simple story. When I first started working, I made a big, huge, gigantic mistake, and that came from a simple handshake. I mean, you know that when people meet up, it's very casual. Hi, my name is Mark. How do you do? We reach out a hand and we do a handshake. And of course, now virtually we can't do a handshake. But if we were to meet in person, it will be very normal in many cultures to reach out and do a handshake. Now, this happened to me in 2004 when I was in India. I was just fresh graduated from college, and I went to India for a short assignment. not very short, not very long, just about 1 year. Now, so what happened was this. I was in the office. I was doing some cleaning, and my right hand especially, was dirty from ink. And when this lady walked into the office, uh, I looked up. There was no one else in the office, so I waved to her. I said hi, and because my right hand was dirty, I stood up. I offered my left hand to that lady, and alas, she got really upset, really angry, and she kind of walked out of the office, and she even scolded me. I'm like, what just happened? I was scolded and I didn't know what happened. Do you know what happened? Do you know why she was so angry at me? It was because in the Muslim world in India, they tell me, my friends will tell me, Mark, in India, right hand we used to eat, left hand we used to wipe. I went like, oh no, I've just committed great sin without even knowing. And that's ethics and culture. I mean, I would have thought that, reaching out with my left hand was just a form of courtesy, but she took it in a different way. Was I wrong? Was she wrong? Nobody was wrong. It is an exhibition of misunderstanding, of poor understanding of culture. While it was me who didn't understand the local culture in India then, it was also her that didn't understand my upbringing and my background. So that is where culture and ethics become very interesting. So a simple, innocent handshake could lead to major disagreements and misunderstandings. Now, another example that happened to me, this happened in Malaysia, not too far from Singapore. Singapore and Malaysia are connected just by a 1 kilometer causeway. Now, what happened? This is exactly what happened. I was at a seminar and I was actually helping out in the seminar. So I was writing name tags for people. There's still sticky tapes and writing names for people. So I got my markers and all these stuff to write names. And then there was a particular person. I randomly grabbed a red marker and I wrote that person's name in red. Yes, bright red marker, name in red. And again, I was just scolded. Yes, I was scolded again really badly. And I was like, what just happened? Again. The person was totally offended. Not so sure in your culture whether it's similar. The person walked off, by the way. And then I asked my colleague, what just happened? What did I do? I just take the nice red marker, write name in red. Got problem? Yes, got big problem. Because in a very traditional Chinese kind of culture, writing a name in red, or rather, a person's name when written in red would mean that the person is dead. Only that people's name are written in red. I don't know whether it's similar in your culture, but this kind of blew me away. Like, oh no, I thought it was just nice because red matches her lipstick or something like that. So this is a huge misunderstanding in again, culture and ethics. While I wanted to different colors for variety, she obviously saw it in a different way. And it was my fault that I didn't understand the culture of people of flow. From then on, I never ever wrote people's names in red. And I understand that there are in some cultures that is also like that. I know in Egypt, when they circle the name in red, that means the person is dead as well. So I wonder whether it's the same in your culture, or have you had any experiences like that where you unknowingly insulted or offended somebody just because of cultural or ethical differences? These are two huge examples that have etched in my life very greatly. So I'll never forget these two instances. And I also remind my staff all the time that when they deal with different customers from different countries, they have to be very cautious and careful and just check before we do anything. So when it comes to shake hands or writing names, we always ask permission. We always ask, is it okay to shake hand, or can I write your name in red, or would you like it another color? So it's a more polite way of doing things. So that's exactly the misunderstanding or not enough knowledge in culture and ethics. And I find that culture and ethics are just lacking in our education system today in Singapore and many parts of the world. I mean, usually ethics and culture are learned from the marketplace or from society, and there is really no formal education on culture like that. But now I think more and more often there are many companies who actually educate the staff internally. But where can we then learn this information? That's where I hope these sessions would help us to learn together. And even I myself, I am still learning. I do business mainly in Southeast Asia and China, and I wouldn't claim to be the expert in culture and ethics, but I've seen quite a little bit, and these are two examples of how I kind of screwed up myself. So I told myself never again to allow myself to, or even my staff, to make a mistake, to offend someone unknowingly. The best is to make sure we check and ask for permission. So how then do we then understand more about culture and ethics? Let's explore further about what happens around the world today. So why is culture and ethics so important? Because the trend of work today is going to be where people of different countries work together. And before COVID-19, there were already international travel and highly globalized workplaces, where people would travel from the east to the west, vice versa, Middle East to Siberia, Russia to Africa, Africa to US. So this is where the travel helped, the affordable travel has helped us to become a very globalized city. So even if I'm staying in a quiet city in Mauritius, I could be in busy Bangkok in the next day. So international travel definitely helps. And despite the COVID-19 situation now, we can still travel. Like now, I am here sitting in Singapore, and you could be in Maldives, you could be in Mount Everest near the snow, or you could be at the beach in the Bahamas. It doesn't matter. But that is just connecting. But what if we're doing collaboration? Today we could collaborate across nations and without borders. So by knowing culture, by knowing better understanding of culture and the different expectations and working styles of people, we can then work better and collaborate better. So trends are already happening. Even before COVID-19, it's already happening. And because of COVID-19 and because of the inability to physically be in a room with somebody, understanding culture becomes more and more important, because we have only this little pinhole camera to communicate and just this chatbot. So that's where the trends of work bring us even more important for us to even know culture and ethics even more. So when the word ethics is being mentioned, what comes to you? I guess several of these words come to your mind as to what ethics really is. So let me just give you a definition of ethics that I really like a lot. But before I share what I feel a definition of ethics is, let me give you some examples of ethics. So the first example I have here is, there was this case where, Virgin, the group owned by Sir Richard Branson, the richest man in the UK, he has a train company, and there was an issue that with Virgin Trains and this bidding for the building of the train routes. So what happened was, because of some unethical practices in the government service, Sir Richard Branson's company, Virgin Trains, was disadvantaged and not allowed to bid for a particular contract, although they were definitely the better, or at least seemed to be a better contractor for the job. And because of that, Sir Richard Branson kind of raised up this issue and brought it all the way to the British Parliament. Eventually, justice prevailed, and in fact, he was able to get more. He was able to bid for the contract and won the contract to bid for the project to build the trains. So another example for you, and this is very close to me: employment, ethics in employment. Today, with the COVID-19 situation, many companies are retrenching or terminating employees. That's again where ethics come in very important role. How are companies retrenching or terminating the staff? There were a lot of articles on LinkedIn early this year as to address the issue of staff termination. Usually, in common practice, the boss will come to the office and say, "Hey, dude, you are fired, and I don't need your service anymore." It usually comes in a form, in a very cordial or polite form. And because of COVID-19 and the lack of being able to meet up in the office, there were some people who were fired, terminated, or retrenched just from a SMS, from a short message on the phone, they got fired. From an email, I mean, how would you feel? Your boss sending you an email saying that, "Hey, please pack up by today. Your services are no longer needed." Now, that doesn't seem very right, doesn't it? So you see, ethics are being applied governments, employment, and then there's also ethics in which area? Data protection. This is the area that I am particularly interested in. Today, many of us are on social media. By the way, do you have Facebook, LinkedIn, WeChat, Snapchat, whatever chat? As long as we are putting ourselves on social media, these huge technological companies have our data. They have our data, not only our cell phone numbers, our emails, but they have our picture, they have what we do, what we like, and that brings about great issues because what do these companies do with this data? Have you ever wondered? I mean, by now you already know that if you do some Google search for some particular product, you will keep seeing ads being thrown at you with regards to that product. In fact, Google, as I mentioned earlier, Google was fined several times because they were using the ads against their users. Let me show you what actually happened. In California, Google was fined, I believe, $10 million because they were using the things that children were typing in the children's YouTube. They were sending advertisements to children who are deemed as not as mature or easily influenced. So what happened was that wherever kids type, let's say Barney the dinosaur, or let's say Transformers, and YouTube will automatically pop up with advertisements to the kids, Transformers toys, Barney toys, stuffed toys, Barbie toys. And then these little kids will then talk to mommy and daddy, say, "Mommy, daddy, I want to buy a toy." And with enough impressions on the kid will be influenced and, well, yes, bother mommy and daddy to buy toys. These are exactly the data that Google has. And when Google was using this data on the kid, they were charged for unethical use of data. So the question I have to everybody is, how are you protecting yourself on social media? And how are these huge technological companies protecting our data from the huge advertisers? If you have Netflix, go watch this movie called Social Dilemma. It is really interesting and it talks about big data in these social networks. If you can't, I'll be glad to, I can probably only share the audio recording because I'm not allowed to share the video because it's not allowed, it's unethical, yeah? So this is a definition of ethics that I like a lot. It was defined by one of the business directories. So definition of ethics, at its simplest, ethics is a system of moral principles. And ethics is concerned with what is good for individuals and society, and it's described by moral philosophy. The term is derived from a Greek word, ethos, which can mean custom, habit, character, or disposition. Now, many times we talk about ethics, we talk about morality as well. So how is morality different from ethics? Again, this is my personal definition. Morality is how I am accountable to myself and my maker, no matter what religion you believe in, or maybe you're even atheist. It doesn't matter, but you are accountable for yourself as your moral guideline. So morality is self, ethics is me to the society that I live in. And of course, legal is made by men, is the law. So when we say do whatever it takes, in a lot of motivational talks and seminars, even Anthony Robbins, you will hear him say, do whatever it takes to get it done. Go for your goal, and so on and so forth. So when I attended all those mega motivational stuff, I will always add one little phrase behind. Do whatever it takes, provided it is legal, number one. Number two, ethical and moral. Legal, because if you're going to do business or something, you want to make sure it's legal, because depending on which country you're in, there are certain laws you can follow and what that you have to follow, isn't it? So legal. Second, ethical. What is accepted in your society? So ethics. So ethics is really about society. And finally, moral. You and your maker or your beliefs. So we talk about ethics today. So as I said, society. Because certain practices are accepted in a certain society, but some ethical practices are not accepted in another. Remember I shared to you earlier about my screw up, where I offered my hand to a Muslim lady, not just my right hand, but worse, my left hand, offering my left hand to a Muslim lady in India. That was way not okay in that context when I was in India in 2004. But in Singapore, if I will do that, people will just, oh, okay, fine, no problem. So you see, what is acceptable in one situation may not be acceptable in another. That ethics. And the other example, writing name in red. Writing name in red, some people say, oh, wait, that's really cool. I love that red color. It's very nice. No problem. But in Malaysia, where I was, that was 2008, writing the name in red got me scolded because only dead people name will be in red. Not sure if that's similar in your culture as well. So you see, ethics is really about society. And because we are going to work or connect with people in different societies and groups, we have to then understand the ethos, the ethics of that group before we do anything stupid. So always remember my stupid mistakes and then prevent it from happening, all right? So if you have any stupid mistakes you want to share, and I would love to hear them, please connect with me and share so I can add a repository of good ethical practices in different countries. I mean, wouldn't that be nice? Because we don't learn this in schools. So it would be nice if someone can give us like a cheat sheet, a hack. If I'm going to do business in, let's say, in India, what do I need to take note of? And in fact, even in India, there are so many cities and so many states in India, and sometimes different states have different ethical practices. I mean, I've been to China as well. Different states in China, again, different practices. Like, even in Russia as well. So if only there was like a little hack, if I'm going to do business with someone living in this area or with a certain upbringing, what do I need to take notice of? So that is my definition of ethics, and I would like to bring this awareness to every single one here, Medina and Beck Zod. Yeah, I hope I got the name right, but if I didn't get it right, please educate me. So that's where ethics becomes very important. So, but what leads to ethics? Culture. It is culture that shapes certain ethical practices in the world. So that's why the talk of culture is so important. And from wherever you are in the world, we have different culture. Not just geographical, it's even by age. There are many ways where we divide people, isn't it? There are baby boomers. I mean, probably your grandparents and your parents will have different mindsets. I'm 41. There are certain mindsets where I am generally classified as Generation X or Generation Y even. So some of you are millennials. Some of you are what you call the Gen Z, or maybe even the Alpha generation. So that's part of culture as well, age. Because people of a certain generation might behave in a certain way or a certain mindset and thoughts. So today I'm going to just help you decode culture a little bit. And I hope this would be useful for everybody. And even I myself, I'm learning. So how do we be smarter? Let's look at the 4 smarts of the world. Have you all seen these abbreviations before? You all know what IQ is, don't you? What's IQ, by the way? What's IQ? Can someone reply? What does IQ stand for? It stands for your intelligence, isn't it? How well you study. What's IQ? Intelligence quotient. What's EQ? Have you heard of EQ? First proposed by Daniel Goleman, the author of EQ, or also known as emotional intelligence, or EQ known as emotional quotient. Emotional quotient, yes, emotional quotient. Then there's A. A stands for adversity. How well you handle shit. How well you handle screw-ups. How well you handle challenges. Or A for adversity. And today I'm going to propose one more quotient to you, and that is the C. The cultural quotient. Yes, it has already been coined, it has already been written, there's a lot of literature here, and I am particularly interested in the cultural quotient, and that's something that I wish to share with everyone today. And please also share with your friends, family, and people around you, because this is something that is really important in this 21st century. So you can also pick up this book that I've got a lot of information from. There's a book on cultural intelligence, and the author, David Livermore, is the author of this book and talks a lot about cultural quotient and how we become better at culture. And the other book that I take a lot of materials from is this book called Ethical Leadership. It's a very, very old book, mind you, but this, I don't think you can find in bookshelves anymore. This book is really good. It gives you a lot of fundamentals on how a leader should be ethical. Disclaimer, this book is written by Westerners. So my challenge to us Asians, or any person not Asian, or even the Asians or middle people in Middle East, there's very little literature on ethics from Asia, because most of us in Asia build our ethics through religion and passed down from family upbringing. So there's not much literature written in, especially in book form, and I would love to build that repository of ethics and cultural practice in Asia. So if you have the interest, please contact me, and we'd love to create some content together. I'm always very interested in culture, and I love traveling, so that's why culture is a big thing to me. So what is culture? What is cultural intelligence? Maybe I'll just share this with you. Cultural intelligence is more than just cultural awareness and sensitivity, which is also vital within a corporation. It is ability to relate to culturally diverse situations as well as to work effectively in them. So individuals with high levels of CQ, cultural quotient, are better able to accomplish goals in a respectful and effective way, no matter what the cultural context. Don't you think this is important for professionals in the 21st century and beyond COVID-19 as the whole world gets smaller and smaller? So that's why I believe very strongly in this, because while understanding culture, we also then understand the ethical practices of that person, people, or company. So I want to bring to the awareness that this is highly important if we're going to be effective global professionals, or even in your own little community. Even in your own little community, there are different pockets of culture, isn't it? There could be a group of, people who are more direct or open, and another conservative groups. So you see, culture is everywhere. But because we want to be global professionals, it becomes even more important for us. So let's just go dive deep a little bit on what cultural quotient is and how we understand it in the greater depth. So before we go into that, let me show you this iceberg picture. Of course, I believe many of us have seen iceberg pictures, and cultural quotient is no different, because there are two parts of culture. One, external, and the other, internal. What we usually don't see, the 90% or 80% of culture. So in culture, what's external? Art, behavior, clothes, money. These are external symbols or displays of culture. And what is internal that cannot be seen? Beliefs, perceptions, upbringing, family, worldview. Let me give you an example. You would know very clearly when you see Middle Eastern art, the curves, the certain square. So someone will question, oh, this looks like Middle Eastern art. Although they probably do not know where it really from, but they can guess it's Middle Eastern art. Definitely very different from the Chinese kind of art with dragons and the certain curves, isn't it? So that's where you can tell the obvious difference between Middle Eastern and Eastern art, the Chinese type, or even the modern kind of art. So that's our culture, behavior, just like what I said, shaking hands, writing names in red. So all these are examples of culture. Beliefs. So in many cultures, beliefs are shaped, like I said just now. A lot of the eastern side of the world, the Asian part, is very driven by religion. And sometimes in many societies, there can sometimes be a confusion between religion and culture and even practices. And Singapore as a country is no different. So I believe in many countries, sometimes they are woven together and sometimes we forget. However, as a global citizen, we have to learn how to unpack these things and understand and see it objectively. And of course, why are we doing that? Not because we are psychoanalyzing, but we're doing that to understand better so that we can, like David Livermore says, to be more effective and to do things more respectfully. I mean, getting things done is not just good. Getting things done respectfully and happily, I think, is more important because we want long-term sustainable relationships. So this is where we need to understand that culture comes in two forms, internal and external. And again, like I said, why raise our cultural intelligence? Obvious, to communicate better, work better with others, and create more opportunities for oneself. Imagine between hiring, if you are a hiring manager or if you're going for interview, do you think the hiring manager will hire someone with a broader knowledge or someone with a more narrow knowledge? Certainly the one with a wider perspective will have a better opportunity at the job, isn't it? So that's where I believe that cultural quotient, cultural intelligence is very important, especially for global professionals. So these are the typical way most cultures are being divided or subdivided all over the world. And this is just by geography. It's very typical, but yet it is a form. Right or wrong, please voice out. This is how it's usually defined all over the world. So maybe you can tell me, which part of the world do you belong in? I definitely belong in the southern Confucian Asian kind of a culture. And Confucian Asia is mainly the Chinese. I'm Chinese by birth. I'm Chinese and I live in Singapore. So Singapore again has like different culture. Although my foundations are Confucian Asian, I would say we are pretty much Anglo. Anglo usually refers to the US, the British. That's very Anglo. After all, the Americans were actually people from Britain, isn't it? That's why they speak English. And well, they have kind of helped to globalize the world, argumentative. Then there's Nordic Europe. Nordic Europe refers more to your Finland, Slovenia, not Slovenia, sorry, Finland, Sweden, those upper countries, those in the north. Germanic Europe is those in Central Europe. Eastern Europe, nearer to Russia. And you have Latin Europe, near the Mediterranean Sea, Spain, Portugal, Italy, Greece, for example. That's probably Latin Europe. And then you have Arabic, the Middle Eastern area, maybe also stretching to the Kazakhstan area, all the way to Confucian Asian, which is mainly Chinese, whole of China, extends to Japan, Korea, even a bit of Philippines, all the way down to Singapore. And then you're going back to the middle, Southern Asian, usually referring to Bhutan, Nepal, India, Mauritian, the area all the way, and then the sub-Saharan African, which usually generally refers to the African countries, which I actually may disagree a little bit because I think Africa is really huge, not really subdivided yet. And last but not least, Latin America, referring mostly to South America. So this is how the author David Livermore has helped to divide the geographical divisions of the world. And depending on these geographical regions, they all behave a bit differently. And today, let's explore the difference and understand how these people behave differently. So, out of curiosity, Medina, which part of the world do you belong to? And Bergzot, how about yourself? Which part of the world do you belong to? Or where are you right now? I'm in Singapore, right? In the equator.
Good afternoon.
Hello, good day. Yes, I hear you. There's a little interference in the microphone. No worries. I heard you and then disappeared. Well, you can just type it there and let us know where you're from. And likewise, Medina, if you can let us know where you are from, it would be nice. Let's go on and see how we can understand more about CQ or cultural quotient. So these are some of the different areas we can use to understand different cultures. And these are some of the things that probably you would think about yourself as well. Oh, Uzbekistan, nice. So individualism versus collectivism. There are some cultures that are more individualistic, and there are some cultures that are more group. So in your culture, what is it like? Usually the two extremes are the Westerners, the Anglo. Anglo is usually the more individual kind of culture, where the other side, Asians are typically more collective. They like to come into groups, and the group think is very important. If no one's doing it, I won't do it. You know, that's the difference between individual and collectivism. So in this whole world, Anglo is where we talk about most very, very individual. Confucian Asian is the extreme where they are very, very conservative. Of course, the whole spectrum where all these people will fall into the middle. So if I were to give you an exercise that if it's a physical class I'll typically do, I will ask you to copy down these 10 different geographical locations and then tell me from a scale of being very individualistic and being very collective, how do you place them on this conundrum in this line? So if you would do a screenshot, you can do it for homework, and maybe some of you can do it for school as well. Write down these 10 cultures, 10 different geographical locations of people, typically all over the world, and then you put up in for the first one, individualism versus collectivism. You put up in the scale who is the most individualistic, and I would say the Anglo, the English, are probably the most individualistic. The Confucian Asians are probably the most collective in nature. Do you agree with that? Do you agree that with this interpretation of collective versus individualistic? Agree or not? Okay. How about for Uzbekistan? Do you think you are more is it more individualistic or more collective? Was it? I've not been to Uzbek before. I would love to go there. That was the plan this year, to go to. It is complicated. Oh gosh. So so that's where again within each society, there may be some people who are more individualistic, those who have a more Western kind of education versus the more traditional ones who are typically more collective. So how about low and high power distance? Meaning, there's usually many layers between the leader and the worker. So in the West, usually again Western Anglo countries, there is very close connection between the workers and the big boss. But in Asia, again, there's a huge gap between the workers and the boss. So again, this is where the Anglo is more on the low power distance, and in Confucian Asia, it's a high power distance. In fact, the highest is probably, I don't know, this is what is written and what I believe as well, is probably in the Middle Eastern countries where different layers, because no, I mean, I believe in many Middle Eastern or Muslim countries, there is a big gap between the males and females. Is that true? So that's probably a bigger power distance between the Arabs versus the Anglo people. So the Confucian Asians will come in the middle somewhere because they are quite community-based rather than distance-based. But definitely in Southeast Asian and the Confucian Asian conundrum, they are usually more in the middle. Cooperative or short-term versus long-term. This is where the mindset of the people are like. So people think for the short-term or more long-term? I would dare say that Confucian Asians are the ones that are probably in the middle. They like pleasure, but they also plan a little bit. But the two extremes, the Anglo people, the Anglo or the European people are more for the moment. They look at short-term gains more than anything else, isn't it? They want to see more short-term than long-term gains, and that's where you see a big difference in culture. And for Asian Confucian, we are probably the ones that think very long, think for the children, think for the grandchildren. Is that in your culture too? How does people perceive planning? Do they plan for tomorrow or plan for the next generation? That's how you can define short-term and long-term. Next will be cooperative versus collaborative, cooperative versus typo error, because comparative. So again, the European countries, the European countries are probably more cooperative. They have a lot of trust. The human rights movement was born in Europe because everyone trusts each other. Everyone trusts each other to take care of each other. Versus a very competitive nation like the Americans and the Middle Europe, the Central Europeans, where they are always going for the best. Who is the best car in the world in terms of safety? Germans, right? German Volkswagen, Porsche, best. The United States, best this, best that as well. Very competitive, always want to be number one. So of course, the other side is of course being very cooperative, like the Africans, because they are very communal people. I think in Confucian Asia, in the culture that I have, it's quite in between. So again, the conundrum does change. How about taking risk? Are you a risk taker? Do you take risk in your organization or on your business or your choice of things? Well, typically, again, in terms of risk, I believe that the people in the West, the people who are the Anglo people, the European people, are the ones that are big risk takers. Uzbeks are high risk avoiders too, just like the Latin Americans and the Latin Europeans. Typically, I think they want to be very safe. So you are also high risk avoider. So exactly. So risk avoidance is also another conundrum. So you see, by knowing these 5 dimensions, oh, by the way, there are 10 dimensions. These are just 5 dimensions. By knowing the dimension of these people, you can understand better the person and to interact with them better. So these are some dimensions that you might want to find out about the culture before you want to do communication. And of course, like you said, even in Uzbekistan or in several other societies, it can be complicated because there is no one definitive way of defining that, people from this area are definitely risk takers. It's not true also. There are also people who are very conservative in the West. And I'm sure within the Uzbek population or the Chinese population, there are people who are big risk takers as well. So of course, it is not definitive, but I would say we have got a rough idea of that culture. If we know the history of the people, we will roughly know that, okay, roughly they are this kind. I mean, Jack Ma started Alibaba with 18 people. Did he take a huge risk? He did. He put his whole life and soul into it. But was there a big payoff? There was certainly a huge payoff for Alibaba and Jack Ma and his 18 people that he started off with. So, of course, when we take risks, we have to weigh our costs and returns. And I speak to you as a risk manager as well. That's kind of my job as well. But of course, that's a topic for another day. So these are the 5 conundrums that you can use to understand your crowd. So let me give you the other 5, and perhaps you also use the 5 to evaluate your own community or your own country. The other 5 are this: direct versus indirect. This is typically very clear, right? I think we agents are more indirect and would definitely like to have more community. So typically, I believe in the Middle Eastern and the Asia and the Asian regions, they are more indirect versus the Westerners, the Anglo and the Europeans, they are more direct in your face kind. So quality life versus goal driven. Remember we talked about the Westerners. They like quality of life, they like style, they like the finer things in life versus being goal driven. So with this regards, I would say that the ones who are getting things done are probably the Latin Americans, Nordic Europe, Sub-Saharan African, and the Arabics, because we want to get things done really fast. Versus quality of life will be this Arabics, Latin America, chill out, relax, let's have fun first. Doing not important, let's relax first. Versus the people who want to focus on getting things done. So I mean, typically I would say that the Muslims are you guys Muslims? So Muslims will say Sha'Allah, right? We leave it to God. So we believe in going to family is important. Belief, religion, serving our God is more important versus the West. Let's get things done. Let's make money. Let's be the best in all that. So that's very more goal driven. Non-emotional versus being expressive. What do you think? Which kind of communities are more non-emotional? So that's where we say that the people who are more neutral are more the people who are more expressive are usually the Latin Americans. Live life the first. Let's get a guitar and have fun and play. Then we have work-life dichotomy versus work and life. In the West, like in countries like in France and Italy, they have a very clear work-life dichotomy, meaning this: work is work, life is life. After 5 p.m., don't disturb me. I'm going to have my whiskey and coffee. But I think in the Asian context, we are more work is our life. We believe we combine our work and life together, and we believe that we should work very hard. So that's more work and life. So you see, a lot of it is divided between Eastern and Western. So they say it's very geographical, which is not wrong. But like I said, in every culture, there are definitely going to be very, very fine differences. And then, of course, standard-driven versus relationship-driven. I dare say that Asians are definitely more relationship-driven rather than standards. You want to make sure you take care of the connection between people before looking at, if you're off the mark by a little bit, out you go. But in Asian, we want to keep the relationship. So these are the 10 different areas where you can actually explore culture and understand the culture better. But do we need to know all 10? To know all 10 is going to be a big headache. So my suggestion is keep these 10 handy and use the ones that are relevant for your context, your work related, or your communication with that party. If you are going to talk about big vision, mission, and making money, you're going to do some pitching to a Westerner, and he's definitely driven by money or objections or objectives, then you might want to pitch that more than something more relational or sustainable or family driven. So it really depends on the party you're talking to or interacting with or working with. So knowing these 10 different conundrums would help you have a greater grasp of cultural intelligence. Any questions so far? So this is all very, very theoretical, and I myself am learning from this conundrum because I think it is so important to understand culture. So this is very new to me as well, but I believe that in our interaction with people in our society as well as other societies, we are learning. So this gives us a reference to check. Where are they? And it's not just geographical, it's even in the little groups or even in companies themselves. So just take this as a good reference. So how do we then build our cultural intelligence today? That's where we want to make it more applicable. No point getting theories and no way to apply. And one of the best ways to improve our cultural intelligence is to know our reason. I run a travel agency. In fact, I used to run a travel agent. I still do actually. And my motivation, because when I was younger, I didn't get a chance to travel very much. So when I was very blessed to be, I was an investor kind of invested in me, kind of bought me over and said, Mark, can you run my travel agency? So I was so happy, and that happened like 12 years ago. Yes, I was given money to run a travel agency, and this particular owner also owned a resort in Malaysia. Yes, I'm in Singapore, but he was here at a resort in Malaysia, and straight away, I had the motivation and drive. I had a very good reason to understand and learn about the Malay culture, because all his staff, or rather most of his operational staff, were Malays, and they were Muslims. I'm not a Muslim, I'm Christian. So I needed to understand how they work, how they function. If I had these 10 different conundrums back then, I would have learned a lot faster. But I had motivation and drive. I didn't know how to learn. I just know that I have to do this. If I want to connect with staff, I want to get there and do work for me, I need to know their language. I need to know their practices. I need to know their beliefs. That's the reason why I learned how to speak Malay. I learned about the Muslim practice from there. That was where I also learned about the left hand, right hand thing, right? It's like, oh gosh, yeah, too bit too late, but never too late, right? So with motivation and drive and reasons, so what are your reasons to want to be culturally intelligent? Is it to build a business, to travel the world and understand people better? Or is it, do you have a desire, maybe a great idea to infect the community with something positive, something that would reach out not only to your community, but beyond your local community to the greater good of the world? And today, with the internet, with COVID-19, it has kind of accelerated the possibility. So if you are going to start working and interacting, cultural intelligence becomes very important. So one way is to research and learn. So research on what? Learn what? For me, when I want to learn a culture of a country, let's say if I'm going to Uzbekistan to do business, the first thing I'll do, I'll read the history. I'll read the history of the country. In high school, I took history. By the way, I failed history at O levels. I didn't pass my history, but I actually love history a lot because history does teach us a lot of things. History teaches us how people typically behave, the wars, what happened in the country, political struggle, maybe even natural struggles. So when you go to another country, understand the history. So when I went to Malaysia, because Singapore and Malaysia are very close and we share a lot of close histories, that was a lot easier. But when I went to the Philippines to do business, my last assignment was I spent 2 years in the Philippines building an F&B business. And when I was in the Philippines, I went to study the history. I went to study why is Philippines the only country in Southeast Asia other than Singapore that speaks such good English? And why is it that Filipinos have a particular way of living? So I understand that the Filipinos were first conquered by the Spanish. The Spanish brought Christianity, or wrong, they brought Roman Catholicism to Philippines, and then first was Portuguese, and then the Spanish came, and more recently in the 1970s, after during the Vietnam War, the Americans came. So the Americans brought a lot of prosperity to the Philippines, and also brought them democracy, and that's where they are right now. They are democracy, and they still speak a lot of English. But you know, the historical roots from hundreds of years ago, the Spanish, the Portuguese, the local Filipino original or indigenous people, these cultures still stays. So understanding culture, you understand better. So sometimes when I ask friends in Philippines, I will not observe. So tell me about your heritage. Oh, I had Spanish grandparents. Oh, so they got a bit of Spanish blood in them. So looking at the food they eat, remember the two parts of the iceberg, what is visible and what's not visible. So I learn and research what is visible first, then slowly go to the invisible part, what is not visible. And one of the things that I enjoy to explore a lot of is the religion. Because I think the religion of a person, the belief of a person is very important to culture. Like say, culture is determined by, or the culture will set the ethics. And ethics is usually crafted by your moral beliefs. And where does morality come from? Morality comes from beliefs, especially religious. So the biggest religions in the world, Christianity, I would say the major religions in the world, Christianity, Roman Catholicism, Muslim, Buddhism, what else do we have? Judaism, atheism, and all the other major religions. So knowing religions will help us understand. Well, I'm still going to practice my own religion. It's not that I'm studying for the fact of convert. No, I'm not. I'm just here to say, let's understand religion so that we can understand each other better. So I would make the stupid mistake of offering my left hand again. So these are all part of understanding. So if everyone in the world understands each one's belief, then wouldn't there be more peace in the world? Wouldn't there be less suspicion? Wouldn't there be less wars? I mean, look at the different wars all over the world. The jihads, the crusades, the Muslims and the Christians have been fighting for years. But why? It's all about history and power struggles and difference in beliefs. But if we seek to understand and then I'm not asking everyone to accept, I'm asking for understanding and at least be able to sit on the table and have a meal together. And when I have a meal with a Muslim brother or sister, no pork, I'm not going to die. So you see, these are all part of cultural ethics. And that's what I think needs to be taught. And I really hope that through research and understanding, then we learn to adapt and be open. So today, because I'm a travel agent as well, I always check with my customers, are there any dietary requirements? And I'm mindful, Muslims don't eat pork. Jewish people do not eat pork. And there are also certain people who are vegetarian, either by religious beliefs or whatever beliefs they have. So that's where we adapt and open. I cannot say that, oh, I insist on going for this particular restaurant because I got very good prices with this particular restaurant. So once we research and understand, we take action by adapting and be open. Yes, I have my particular beliefs. Yes, I love my beef, I love my pork, but I'm not going to impose it on my customers or the people that I'm working with. Fair? So sometimes I even make special arrangements with different people with different needs. Because some people are very particular, some people are pretty fine. So again, even within each different religious belief, there's also a scale. So we want to check that as well. And by asking, I believe there's always no harm asking. So sometimes I ask, is it okay if I have my meal here and this food is not halal or not doesn't contain, it has more things? Or is it okay to have my beer or whiskey here? So asking for permission, I guess, is a very basic form of courtesy. And we only bother if we understand. So be motivated to learn, research, learn, adapt, be open. After learning and adapting, The way to is to gain experience. Go and take the first step. Go and meet someone of a different culture, different religion, different skin color, different mindset. Just get to know a friend. And today with social media, it's so easy. But always remember, let us be respectful. And yeah, like I said, make new friends. So today I've got Bugzot, who's from Uzbekistan. I'm so happy to meet someone from Uzbekistan. I have not had a chance to speak with someone before, and I would love to find out more about culture. And I've got a friend who has traveled around the countries, the Central Asian area, and he says it's so beautiful. I can't wait to go. So that's where I love traveling, for that reason of understanding culture. So I hope some of you will take some of these steps to find your reason of growing your cultural intelligence, not just your IQ, EQ, and AQ, but also grow your CQ, your cultural intelligence. So, questions, please. We didn't do much practices. I was supposed to give you the practice on drawing the chart, but today we have no time for that. So we have, it's very hard, but never mind. So I open the questions, with regards to culture, and what do you think? What are your thoughts on culture? And I would love to hear your questions, and also maybe you can share your culture with me. Oops. Press the wrong button. Sorry. Any questions? Do type your questions. Medina and Vexord. Coffee? Yeah, see, we drink. So again, cultures, coffee and tea. In Singapore, we're kind of in between. We have have you got Starbucks in your country? Oh, I can send it to you. No Starbucks. But do you have coffee? Or are you more tea culture? Like, China is more tea culture, isn't it? I know China's all tea culture. And then the extreme, the West, it's all coffee culture. So in Singapore, we are in between. So sometimes I have coffee, sometimes I have tea. So I feel that I'm very blessed to be in Singapore because we are kind of stuck in the middle between the Confucian Asian as well as the Anglo-European cultures. So I think in Singapore we are very lucky. And I understand that from Sir Rudy that that in Central Asia, because it's landlocked, it's a bit harder, and that's where we want to share these lessons with everybody. At home you always drink tea. So do you know what tea you drink? Red, black, white? I know a lot of the cranberries, walnuts come from that part of the world where you are. I watched many documentaries on Central Asia because I've been looking at going there for a holiday through China. That was the goal for this couple of years. If no questions, then maybe I'm going to ask questions to you. Black tea, right? I use black tea to make kombucha nowadays. A new little thing I'm doing for fun during the COVID-19. Have you heard of this thing called kombucha? Kombucha is a fermented tea drink. So I've been doing kombucha just for fun at home. Go check it out. It's actually quite good for health. Kombucha is a fermented tea, and you can actually add flavors to the tea. So it might be a business idea for some of you. Why not? You can check out kombucha a little bit. Well, you have no questions, then I have got questions for you. And maybe we can discuss about this. This is quite interesting. Now, discussion one. This is a real possible scenario. And let me bring you to the icy cold area in the Arctic Circle, where the polar bears and whales reign. So there's always this kind of power. And let's say someone has discovered that holy smoke, we have got a very good oil well here. We've discovered an oil well because a particular ice cap has melted, and we know that there is oil here, and it is very easy to drill. And we get to be able to not just harvest the crude oil, but we also have natural gas. However, this particular area, within just 10 kilometers of the area, there is many polar bears. And there's also been many sightings of polar bears. What now? Do we dig for oil, or do we leave the polar bears alone? This is a real ethical challenge. So if you, depending on who your team is, I am sure you will have different viewpoints. If you are a business owner, or if you are part of this team that have been asked to evaluate and look into the, I would say, the oil exploration and retrieval, what will you do? So, what if you are an employee? You are the employee of the company, and as an employee, or maybe even a director, your job is to get business for the country or the company at all costs. And you know what? Maybe in that country that you're serving, let's say in some country in the Arctic, there's no other source of revenue, no tourists. I mean, huge question, isn't it? So this is where there's a huge ethical dilemma. I love nature too. I've hiked Mount Everest. I run a resort in Malaysia. We are just at the foot of a mountain. We have a 65-meter waterfall. I love nature. But you know, there is a very fine line, isn't it? Well, if I don't dig for oil, then my company has no revenue. Then where's my salary coming from? So you see the ethical challenges here. So as a global professional, as a person with ethics, how do you handle this kind of situation? How do you handle not just yourself? Because remember, you have a company, isn't it? You have colleagues, you may have a boss, you have workers under you. So I'm not here to give you the right answer, because there's a lot of information that we do not have in this context. I've only given you a very rough context. But you see that more and more in the 21st century, there are going to be issues like this. There are going to be challenges that will challenge your beliefs, that will challenge your personal preferences. Just like Verzot is saying, I would like to protect the nature. Me too! But I need to protect my job. I need to feed my kids. I need to feed my company. I got 100 other workers. Then how? Do I fire them? So you see, there are so many considerations. There are not enough time. And if we are put into that situation, our deep down morals come in already. So are we morally grounded? Are we ethically grounded? And how can then we use our cultural intelligence to then influence people around us? And then again, is our point of view the right point of view? That's where we have to exercise wisdom. So in the 21st century, as we go beyond COVID-19, we have to exercise a lot of wisdom. Today, in many countries, the question is, do we lock down or do we just open up? Is it lockdown in Uzbekistan right now, in Tashkent? Is it lockdown? Are you on lockdown? Is people going up? Not lockdown. So in certain countries, like I understand in the Philippines, where I have got business there, in the Philippines, it is officially on lockdown. But because in the Philippines, people typically live or work by the week, by the day. If they do not go out to work, they have no money. They have very little savings. So sometimes they say on the papers, or the newspapers, or the news, it's lockdown. But I ask my friends who are on the ground, they say, oh, people are doing that. They're trying to do, they're scouring for food. They're doing some small jobs here and there to make a living. So there's always, or I would say more and more, there are going to be ethical dilemmas that are going to be thrown to us. What do you think are some ethical dilemmas in your society? What do you think are some ethical dilemmas by your government or by companies around you? So I hope this makes you think a little bit. So sometimes being a government or being a company or a politician or business owner, it's hard. There are real ethical dilemmas. Think about it. There may be some. Think about it. I think one of them that you can think about is China's big plan, right? China's Belt and Road Initiative. How does that affect your country, your city, your people, your economy? Think about that. No need to give you an answer. Another ethical dilemma: casino versus tourism. This is a very common ethical dilemma that happens in many countries, and it's also happened here in Singapore before. And I also know of Cambodia and Laos. Laos is a landlocked country, just like Uzbekistan and other stan countries. It's landlocked, no waterway, no seaport. So some of these countries, they built a casino, and that kind of drives tourism to that city. But what are the other possible ill effects it can bring to the city? And I understand in a Muslim city, if the city is Muslim, there's definitely no casinos. But in a country that wants tourism dollar, when the COVID-19 is lifted, when global travel is open again, tourism will probably be one of the first money that comes into any country. Would building a casino now help the economy? Or maybe I throw this question to you. If Tashkent, if somebody in Tashkent or any city were to build a casino, what are some of the implications to your city, to your culture, and how do you think people will respond? I remember that in Singapore, when they wanted to build a casino here in, I think it was 1990 something, there was a lot of resistance. But fact is, we have now 2 casinos in Singapore. And this casino is interesting. Singaporeans like me, we are not allowed into the casino unless we pay a levy. Every time we go to a casino, we have to pay $100. So that is a deterrence for local Singaporeans to go to the casino because they are using it to target tourists to come to Singapore. In Singapore, we are also severely affected by COVID-19 because a huge percentage of our revenue comes from tourism. So ethical and huge social, economical dilemmas. So I believe that as you progress in your career, in your walk in life, you will have some ethical dilemmas. I am not here to tell you what is right, what is wrong. You really have to think. And therefore, we have to think critically. Yes, it's not easy. It's very difficult. Because again, what is right to one may not be right to another. And then there are other stakeholders. So really, we have to think very carefully and respond appropriately. And therefore, cultural intelligence becomes extremely important for us to, well, craft our message and put it out the right way. Because if it's not put out the wrong way, it might cause war, isn't it? Or hate, which is something we do not want. So one more last one for you to think about. And this might involve you. Digital streaming versus going to the cinema. Do you go to cinemas anymore? You know, in Singapore now, I don't think so many people go to cinemas. We all watch from what? Oops. We all watch from iPad. I mean, I got Netflix. So I watch movies on Netflix or YouTube. I have not been to the cinema for, I think, more than 2 years. Yeah, no more cinema. So cinema can close down. Digital streaming. So Netflix also kind of destroyed the video rental service in the United States. So by starting a business, oh wow, it's not been the same for 5 years. You beat me. Fantastic. Interesting. But I'm sure if you ask your parents, your grandparents, they might have been to the cinema before. So what? You guys are on Netflix and Google now, Google YouTube now. So you see, so the question here is, for one business to grow, I destroy another business. Another food for thought. Did you create a new business and destroy another business to take the market share, or can you create value for each other? No right and wrong. Again, no right and wrong. Again, it's an ethical and cultural dilemma that I want to bring to your awareness. It's real, and we just have to find the right way to handle it. You also do not want to create an enemy out of someone. And in many countries, you also don't want to be friendly because, well, someone in the Philippines tell me this: my life in the Philippines is only worth 20 cents because that's the price of one bullet. I'm not so sure in Uzbekistan and in where you are if guns are legal. In the Philippines, I can buy a gun for 300 US dollars, and I was offered one. However, I didn't take because I was like, it's heavy responsibility to own a gun, isn't it? So again, these are ethical dilemmas that you want to think about. So I hope I've given you some food for thought, some brain juice to think about, and think of what are some of the possible ethical dilemmas in your country and in your city, and maybe how would you uh, uh, address these issues and from which point of view. But the message I'm bringing here is, let us be perspective. Whatever happens in our societies, whatever decisions made by our leaders, our governments, our our groups, let us do our best to understand. And instead of challenging them, can we understand? Can we use our cultural intelligence and perspectives to understand further so that we don't cause problems? Look at Hong Kong. Look at other parts of the world where there are riots and challenges. It's just because of differences in thoughts and clash of ideas. So we're here to promote peace. We're here to promote collaborations. We're here to promote adding value and sustainability to our city, our society, our community, and if we can, the greater world. So I'm so glad to be sharing this with you today, because thanks to Zoom. So these are the two books that I shared. They are here with me right now. If you have a chance to get hold of them, do grab them. You can. These two books on ethical leadership and this one. I love this one. Leading with cultural intelligence. This is the one that gives you a lot of that gives the 10 conundrums that I shared just now. So I'm still digesting this book. I'm reading it for the third time now, and I want to really meet this David Livermore in person because I think what he proposed is really good. This is on ethical leadership. I run my own business and I have teams as well. So how do I apply ethical leaderships in practice, in work, and even in communities? My only issue is that this book is very centered on Western ethics, Socrates, Archimedes, not enough of what's Asian. And I feel that we should step up as Asians to have our, well, materials on ethics on what is the right thing to do when there are challenges. No right and wrong answer, so that's where I come from. So this is my contact. This is what I do. My name is Mark Barnabas. I hope I have given you some food for thought. And I would like to share my mission statement in life with you. Life is either a daring adventure or nothing at all. And this is said by the great Helen Keller. Helen Keller was the first blind and deaf, mute person who became an advocate, a lawyer. So you can go and research Miss Helen Keller. She's passed on already. So Helen Keller, the first deaf, blind, and mute lawyer. So she said, life is either a daring adventure or nothing at all. What is life worth living? Life is worth living only when we explore and make value of the world. That's why we did the GPS. That's why we're doing this. And we believe that the whole world is getting smaller and smaller. Let's work together to make good value, not war, not over competition. Competition is not that competition is no good. Competition is good. Managed competition is good. So let's work together to make peace for the whole world. So that's me. And this app, you can add me on Facebook or LinkedIn. You can search for Mark Barnabas and you will find me. So, hi Nozima. Thank you for coming in. Although we have almost done, I can send the link to you. And if you just add me on Facebook and you just ping me, I will send you the video if you want, so you can share with others as well. So I hope you enjoyed yourself, and well, not just enjoy, please think and see how you can apply in your own organization. So my last action plan for you is go learn a culture of another country, another belief, okay, be it geographically, it could be religious, or it could be otherwise. Read, understand, and learn. So I will go back to that slide where I said about what to do. This one, how to build your cultural intelligence. So Nozima, if you're here, you can just take a screenshot of this as well. I said to find your reason for improving your cultural intelligence, and do it by first researching and learning about others, and then adapting and being open to them. In fact, just be open first and then adapt. Experience it if possible. If it's open, if you are near enough to China, hop over to China. You know, I don't know. It'll be interesting. Or hop over to Kazakhstan. If it's, is it very different? I'm not so sure. Or hop over to Turkmenistan. They are not very far. I'm not sure if they're open for travel, but if you have the opportunity to explore, and that's one good reason for traveling. Of course, if I know air travel is not possible now, but if land travel is still open for you, by all means, go ahead, because no one else is traveling right now. Darn for us. You know, in Singapore, we are kind of stuck here. I'm like, in Singapore, we're not very big. We're only 42 kilometers east to west. North to south, 32 kilometers. Not very big. It's really small here. So I really can't wait to get out of Singapore and, well, visit the world. So with that, thank you very much. My name is Mark, and do add me on Facebook and LinkedIn. And yeah, Bergzot, please drop me a message so that I can send you the video for your reference. Nozima, you got any questions for us? Bergzot and Medina? If not, then thank you very much. And next week we will have Stephen, who will share about how to pitch your ideas and even get funding for pitching. So join us next week as well as we do pitching for ideas in the 21st century. And if you look at how we flow our events, if you look at our training programs, let me just share the slide with you. We talk about today. We're doing number 6. Next week we're doing number 3. Pitch your ideas effectively, and then we go on to other skills. So last week we talked about how to think of ideas, apply design thinking for innovation. Then today we talk about adapting to different cultures, and then you pitch your ideas correctly. And even pitching itself, you have to understand the culture of the people you are pitching to, right? Pitching to an American, pitching to a Chinese, pitching to an African, pitching to a younger kid, you know, very different. So that I am done. I wanted to do more exercises. No questions, yeah. All right, so feel free to just email me and contact me. All right, so I'll leave my I'll leave my emails here. So with that, I'm done. How do you say thank you in your language, in Uzbek? Ramat. Is that it? Is that it? Ramat? Did I get it right? Ramat. So Ramat. Do you do this? Ramat. Oh, Ramat. Okay, so there's going up. So Ramat. Got it. You know, Ramat is a name in Malay, you know. You see? Culture, right? Yes, it's a name. It's someone's name. It's a name of a guy. It's a guy's name. Interesting, right? You see? Oh, you also have Ramat. So usually, I think Ramat is usually a Muslim name. Is Uzbekistan typically a Muslim country? So typically Muslim, yeah? So Fridays are weekends for you. Friday and Saturdays, I presume. So was there anything I said that was possibly offensive? You know, it's, as global citizens, sometimes we really make mistakes, you know. So I hope I didn't offend anybody or say the wrong thing. There are three big things we have to be very careful when we speak to people outside of our culture. Politics, religion, and sex. So we try to avoid these three topics. But I'm going very, very, I would say, dangerously in the area of religion, because most people don't like to talk about religion, but I talk it openly because I think it's important to understand culture through religion. As long as we learn two things. Number one, tolerance. Number two, acceptance, and then harmony. I think harmony is going to be tough. At least we have tolerance is one thing. Tolerance, then acceptance. Because like I can tolerate you, but I may not accept you, right? There are some people like that. They can accept that they can tolerate that, oh, there are people of different beliefs, but you know, I'll never sit on the same table as them. So I guess as younger people, we ought to be more open because we want to globalize. So that's where we are different. Well, is there anything you want to talk about? I would love to